Hey team, all right, give me about 10 minutes and I'm going to tell you the single most important thing that you can do for your health and well-being this term. So we've just wrapped up the school holidays and hopefully you've had a big focus on restoring your rest and restoring, and leading into a new term, depending when you're watching this, but at the moment we're heading into term 3, which is notoriously a crazy busy term and is associated with a whole lot of angst and stress. So we're going to focus on the single most important thing that you can do to look after yourself this term. Okay, now the premise for this is that if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there? Now that may be cliched, but as a smart professional woman, no doubt you guys have covered goal setting heaps. You might have covered it through work. You might have some personal goals that you've been working toward, but I'm going to cover the most significant and super important shift in your understanding that will help make the biggest difference to how you set goals. Okay, so first of all, let's just have a look at some of the current problems with the way that we go about setting goals. Okay, usually we don't write them down. Usually we don't set them in a more formal sense. We sort of have a more broad idea. Usually they're not written down in a way that we can easily see and gauge progress. So there's not a lot of markers along the way. And if you think about, for the teachers among us, if you think about our students, if we said, well, I want the student to read better over the term, when you look at the complex task of reading or teaching a student how to read, we would have a lot of markers along the way to help know that that student is tracking in the direction that we want to go. But usually for our own goals, and particularly around our own health and well-being, we don't write them down in that way or record them in that way that we can easily gauge and assess progress. Usually we don't review them. So again, if you look at, even if you look at teaching spelling, we would have a weekly spelling test. Sometimes we'd have it multiple times in the week, multiple times certainly over the term, to make sure again that we're making progress. Often they're not reviewed in any frequency. Often there's no accountability, so we might set a goal, but there's a risk in terms of making that goal known. So we often keep that to ourselves, and then things often go by the by, and that goal doesn't come to fruition. One of the really important bits is often the so that. So we'll have a look a bit later in terms of the when we get into the actual goal setting part of it, often the so that is not big enough. And what that means is that it's really not inspiring for you, or it's not worth the effort, to be honest. So while we go through that effort, if the payoff is not big enough to warrant all the effort that I have to put into it. Okay, so there's some reasons why our current goals don't work for us. Okay, so let's have a look now. What we're talking about with goal setting is changing behavior. So if we think of behavior as something that we can see and count, I'll just go through a couple of examples. So if you've got young kids, an example of a behavior would be sleeping through the night. An example of a behavior would be talking back to you. An example of a behavior wellbeing wise would be that you would enter fortnightly measurements. If you're into the fitness side of things, an example of a behavior would be attending training sessions. We can check off on a roll and see whether you're attending or not. So there's a sort of a linear model there. It's a yes or a no. You can check off something that behaviour's occurred. Okay, if you a lot of people say that part of their health is that they don't drink enough water, and so part of that would be drinking X number of glasses of water per day. So we can count that, we can observe that, we can measure that. Okay, so behaviour is something that we can see and count. Okay, so how do we know which area to focus on? So as with when we work with students, I'll give you a teacher example. We had a student that we were working with who exhibited some really complex behaviour, but the one thing that really irked the teacher the most was the thing that we decided to focus on. So we had some other ideas about what we'd focus on, but we focused on the one thing that irked the teacher the most. Why? Because that teacher was most invested in working with us to solve that problem for them. Okay, so as with kids or with students, focus on one behaviour, just the one behaviour that's most important for you. Okay, and if we look at the 5 pillars of health, our food, mood, family and fitness, we'll have a look in a moment and see which ones do you think would be most important for you. Okay, so if we look at food, a lot of times we say, I want to eat better. So if we look at what that might mean, we say, well, I want to, this term, I'll prep my lunches on a Sunday. Let's say I want to lose weight. We can say this term, I'm going to plan my meals at work so that I can have more energy. And I'll break down, remember I was talking about behaviour earlier. I'll talk you through a little bit later with an example about weight outcome goals versus behaviour goals. So if we look at mood, often people say, I'm just feeling blah. I don't want to feel blah. We could say, well, each week I'm going to practice at least 2 activities that bring me joy. Or I'm feeling lonely and disconnected. Well, each week I'll reach out and connect with at least 2 friends. I'm feeling stressed out and then I overeat. So we can say for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to monitor what leads up to me stress eating so that I can gain an insight and find some more productive ways to manage my stress. Okay, so there's some really concrete things there that we can check off. If we look at these here, we can check those off and go, did you do that? Did you in the last week, did you connect with at least 2 friends? In the last week, did you practice 2 activities that brought you joy? Okay, so you can effectively, having those behaviours really clear means that you can check them off and make sure that you're making progress. Okay, a family example, I feel like I'm yelling at the kids all the time, and often the behaviour that we want, or the goal we would say, is I want to stop yelling at the kids. A different frame on it, a more helpful frame, is each week I'm going to schedule at least 2 opportunities for some quality time with the kids. Or often people say, my partner and I are at each other a lot, and the goal is, well, I want to improve my relationship. But a behaviour would be, well, each week I'm going to schedule a date night so that we can reconnect. Again, coming back to that behaviour goal, you can check off, did you do what you said you were going to do in the last week or in that specified time frame? Okay, so you guys can use this a lot. You can use this in your work, you can use it with your families, you can use it with your health and fitness, you can use it with your well-being. Okay, some fitness goals would be, a lot of people say, well, I want to get to training more often. Okay, that's a bit difficult to gauge how we're progressing. So an outcome goal would be, this term I'll attend 2 out of 3 scheduled sessions, or this term I'll train 3 times per week. If we break that down even further into what we call a behaviour goal, which is different to an outcome goal, we say, so that I can get strong and feel in control and have some more time for me, and tick off these things here. So I'll arrange with my partner or family friend of mine the kids that I can train. I'll complete a training session online when I can't make the sessions in person. So you can have a whole list of things there that you would set for yourself. I know a lot of you guys are to-do list, checklist kind of people, so you can set up those behaviours that then contribute to that goal. Because you might have a very simple goal of, I want to attend, or I want to train 3 times a week so that I can get my strength back, or so that I can feel strong and healthy, or so that I can move better, or so that I can do a particular kind of movement, or I can keep up with my kids. So it's something that's inspiring for you. But to then check that off and go, well, what are the things that I'm going to do? What are the behaviours that I'm going to do to help me achieve that goal? And that's what we call a behaviour goal as opposed to an outcome goal here. Okay, so your homework. I did say I'll try and keep this lesson in close in time-wise, so I'm tracking along okay. All right, so write an inspiring goal for you in the area that you want to focus on this term. So that can be food, mood, family, fitness related. Obviously, I'll work with you guys in a fitness kind of space. So that's, but effectively, it's really hard to separate things. Like we know, for example, when things there's pressure at home, or you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, that then you struggle to get to training. So that's part of the difficulty in terms of how you. It's hard to look at things like fitness in its own right or training in its own right, because it all interconnects. So how we set that goal? Put a time frame. That can be by the end of the week, by the end of the term, by midway through the term, each week. So rather than it can be each week, or every 2 weeks. Tell me what you're going to do. What is it that you're going to do? And that's going to be a behaviour, something that we can see, something we can count, so something that we can observe. What is it that you're going to do? So that, and this needs to be worth the effort. It needs to be worth the effort. Otherwise, why would you bother? Okay? And behaviours that will help me achieve this, these are things, write down 3 or 4 things that you're going to do, and I'll just move my head out of the way there. Hopefully so you can see that. So list 3 or 4 behaviours or things that we can see and count to know that you're actually making progress. And so there's not a value judgment. A lot of the time when it comes to health and weight loss and well-being, we're our own worst enemy and talk crap and say some really horrible, nasty things to ourselves. So it's not a judgment based in terms of, oh, I didn't get to training, or I haven't eaten how I wanted to be, I've been eating crap or rubbish lately. It's not about that at all. It's just, did you do the things that you said you were going to do? So part of that's about building trust, and part of that is about being able to track and monitor your progress. So it's really lovely to look back over the weeks and go, yeah, you know what, I did these things that brought me joy. I got to spend this quality time with the kids. I got to do these things that help improve my mood. I got to do these things and now I'm feeling a whole lot stronger. So writing down those 3 or 4 things that we can actually see, count and check off. So that's your homework. You can schedule that you can have that for the term if it's something you want to work over the term. We'll have a look. We'll look through some of the pitfalls earlier. One of them is that we don't come back to it often enough. So we're going to have a look through this. So spend a bit of time this week looking through this and really putting some effort in, and then that way we'll get, or you'll get a whole lot more out of this at the end of the term. So you can put in some checkpoints along the way. A good indicator would be weekly or fortnightly, and then also midway. So sort of 5 week, a halfway mark through the term, we'll come back and have a look and see how you are progressing. All right, so homework by I will. What is it you're actually going to do? And so that being that it needs to be worth the effort. And the 4th and most important step is, what are the behaviours that are going to help me achieve that? All right, good on you guys. Let me know. Post your homework in our group so that I know you've done it. That was the accountability bit, which we often miss, is writing. So you achieve a few things. You write it down. You've actually mapped it out, and you've got some group accountability by posting it in the group. All right, well done.